What's up again, everybody? I'm Clayton. Welcome back to Ages of Film. And today I'm going to be reviewing Superman the movie from 1978, directed by Richard Donner and starring Christopher Reeve as Superman, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. So since we have a new Superman movie coming out this year in July, it's going to be directed by James Gunn, and it's going to be kicking off the new DCU universe. So I thought, why not go ahead and review all the Superman movies leading up to the premiere of the new Superman movie? So there's going to be 10 Superman reviews total. We're gonna go through each Superman movie, and then when the new one drops, I'm gonna review that movie, and then we'll do a Superman ranking video at the end where I'll go in and rank all the Superman films. So if you're a Superman fan, if you're a DC fan, hopefully these next 10 episodes will be enjoyable for you. While you're here, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Join the pack and get in on all the fun. So just a reminder, guys, this is just my opinion on this movie. No need to be upset or offended by anything I have to say. Let me know your thoughts of Superman the movie in the comment section. Do you agree or disagree with me? Just be respectful about it, and we can have a good conversation in the comments. So let's get right into this review, starting always with the positives and then getting to the negatives. So getting into the positives here for the original Superman movie. I grew up with this film. I am a big, I'm a DC fan. I'm more of a Batman fan. Batman, that's my dude. Ride or die till the end with Batman. But I'm also a Superman fan. I do like Superman quite a bit. He's actually my second favorite in DC. So, and I grew up with this movie. I grew up with Christopher Reeve as my Superman. All due respect to Henry Cavill, he did a great job. But for me, my idea of Superman is always going to be Christopher Reeve. So I am going to be discussing the extended cut in this review, since that's the one I typically always watch now. So one of the positives, the big positive for me with this movie is Christopher Reeve as Superman. I think he does just an incredible job with this character, bringing this character to life, and being the definitive Superman for 30 plus years until we got Henry Cavill. Everyone's Superman was Christopher Reeve, and what made him so good as this character was he understood having to portray Clark Kent in a different way than he portrayed Superman, and he embodies that. He embodies both. When he's Clark Kent, he plays into that nerdy, clumsy, reporter very well. He's very believable as that character. And it's also in his body language. He's hunched over, he makes himself look smaller, more, weak, more just more prey to all the criminal predators out there in Metropolis. And then when he becomes Superman, you see not only a change in his, physical look presentation, but in his body language as well. He's more confident, his chest is out, he's upright. His voice changes to more he goes from stuttering and being you can tell he doesn't have a lot of confidence as Clark. When he's talking to Superman, he's very direct, he's very confident, very assertive with the way he talks. It's a completely different demeanor. And Christopher Reeve he embodied that, and he played that so well. His Clark Kent is different than his Superman. And that's something that you have to understand and you have to really play into if you're gonna play this character. And he played both so well. There's one scene in particular where he's with he's talking with Lois. She's interviewing him for the Daily Planet, and she goes to change. And he's at the time he's Clark Kent, and he had just got done uh, being Superman, and doing the interview as Superman. He changes to Clark Kent, meets Lois in her house. She goes to change, and as she's changing, he takes his glasses off, and he wants to reveal to her that he's Superman. And you see him literally transform in that scene where his chest comes out, his head goes up, and it's this brilliant piece of acting by Christopher Reeve and going from Clark to Superman in the same scene and then back into Clark as she comes back out. It's a great performance, and Christopher Reeve absolutely embodied both sides of this character, the Clark Kent side and the Superman side. So he's honestly one of the best parts of this film is his portrayal as both Clark and Superman. I also love Gene Hackman in this film as Lex Luthor. I thought he did a great job. He also kind of embodies that character. He has such a commanding presence on screen. Every time he's on screen, I'm glued. He just there's something that you learn in acting called command the screen and bring an energy to your presentation and your vocal your speech, your delivery of your lines, but also in your body. And Gene Hackman was a master of that. And he just makes that character of Lex Luthor so engaging, so entertaining. He leans into that arrogant, pompous, side of the character, embodies it. I believe he is that guy and that character. He gives a great performance in this one as well. Some subtle humor that's not like overt, but it comes across as natural humor with him, his interactions with Otis, his little sidekick, who brings a somewhat comedic relief in the film, and just great performance by Gene Hackman as well. I thought Margot Kidder does a fine job as Lois Lane. I personally prefer Amy Adams as Lois in the you know Zack Snyder DC world. I think she does a better job as Lois, but Margot Kidder still did a fine job, especially for this time being the first Lois Lane really in a Superman feature film like this. And I thought she had a very natural chemistry with Christopher Reeve. I thought they go well together. Their chemistry feels very organic, very natural, very real. I can see the chemistry on screen and the romance there. So I thought she does a fine job and has great chemistry with Reeve. Um, the production design was another strong positive. A lot of the sets were built for this movie. The Fortress of Solitude in the beginning was all built. You can tell it's practical effects. It looks and feels real because it was. They created miniatures. They created a part full set pieces for those scenes. The underground layer where Luthor is staying, that was built, that was real production design. So some really good set pieces in this film that enhance the experience for me because they look real. So it's easier for me to accept them and kind of buy in to that world as being real because a lot of it was real for the most part. And it looked good, especially for its time, 1978. What they did in building the Fortress of Solitude, just great stuff there. Still holds up, still looks really good. So, really good production design for this film. The visual effects, again, for 1978, still hold up. It still looks good. To the say, for the most part, there's a few areas in the film that don't age as well by today's standards, especially with how far technology has come and with everything that CGI can do now, um, and animatronics and everything. Like some of the stuff has dated a little bit, but I don't think there's any part of the film that is has dated so much that it takes me out of the film. It still looks really good today, and especially for its time, it was ahead of the curve for its time. So the visual effects overall, I still think look really good, and the flying scenes and everything. Again, you can tell, you can see some of the effects, but it's not, by any means bad visual effects. I think it still holds up pretty decently today. But you can't talk about Superman the movie without talking about the score. I love the score for, this original Superman series. That Superman score, as soon as it hits, man, I instantly get goosebumps. I get amped up, and it gets me going, man. Like, it's such the horns in this film, it just man, this has gotta be one of my favorite movie scores of all time. I love I sing it to myself all the time. I'll be out somewhere and just na 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 na. It's so iconic, man. Everyone knows and loves that score. It's amazing. It's a can of corn. It's the best. I love the score for this movie. That alone gets several notches uh ranking wise for me with this film. So love the score, so good, so iconic, and fits the film, it fits the character of Superman. You hear that score and you're like, that's Superman. And yeah, great stuff. I also really liked that the opening sequence on Krypton and Krypton's demise felt more organic than what we got in Man of Steel. Like, to me, it felt like, okay, we have Zod and his little henchmen being sentenced off, and then from there, it felt like a natural. You have Jarrell meeting with the council about trying to, what are they going to do about Krypton's collapse? He's trying to warn them we need to get out, and then from there, you have Jarrell and Laura, his wife, trying to save their son, Cal, by sending him to Earth. It felt more fluid, more organic. It didn't feel rushed. And we'll talk about this more when we get to Man of Steel. But that was one of the issues I have with Man of Steel, is that the opening sequence with Krypton being destroyed felt very rushed and sped through. Here it felt more fluid, more organic for me personally. You guys may disagree, that's totally fine. But for me, it didn't feel rush. It felt more steady and more organic, um, leading up to Krypton's demise. So all that stuff, positives for me. And then I did like the story here. It's some people might argue that, well, Superman didn't really have an arc in this film. There wasn't really an arc for Clark. He kind of stays the same throughout the whole film. And that's true. My rebuttal to that argument would be that's not what the story is about. That's not the story that's trying to be told here. This isn't a story of a hero's journey in the sense of someone discovering themselves to be a hero, like Batman or Iron Man or whatever, fill in the blank. This is a story about one person making the difference in the world, one person teaching society how to be good and what goodness looks like, being a symbol of hope to a very fallen, corrupt world. That's what Superman is embodying in this film. He's embodying hope. He's giving Metropolis and the people hope and inspiring them to be something better than what they are. You don't need an arc for that story. That's not the story being told. So there are situations based on what story you're telling. There are situations where your main protagonist doesn't need an arc. If you study script writing and the process of writing scripts and what the different types of script writing and screenplays that there are, you'll learn that not every script is the same. Not every You don't need to approach every script the same way. It depends on what the story is that you're trying to tell. And this story was more about a man changing the world and saving the world, not necessarily a man being shaped by the world and by this his circumstances. This is a story about a man changing the circumstances and changing the world based on who he is and what he can do, caring about the little people. We even have a scene of Superman rescuing this cat out of a tree, for this little girl, caring about the little people, caring about, each individual. And that's what this story is about. And I think that, it is a good story to tell. And I think it's told pretty well. So all those are positives for me in this film. Moving into the negatives, I do have some negatives here. That it's not a perfect film. One of the negatives for me, mostly it's in the script. I don't know that there are some issues with the script. It gets messy at some points, primarily in the third act. I don't know that the payoff to the story is fully realized. I would have liked a scene or two at the end after Superman has saved, the planet from the missile, saved California or whatever from the missiles that Lex Luthor launched. I would have liked to have gotten at least a scene or two of, maybe the Daily Planet getting reports in of crime going down, or getting a scene where you see the impact that Superman has had in Metropolis. Seeing an impact, someone doing something different than what they would have done, being inspired by the presence of Superman. We don't really get that. It's telling the story of a person changing the world for good, but we don't really get that paid off. We don't really get anything after, Superman rescues and saves the planet. We don't really get any payoff to that. We don't see the uh the effects that Superman has had on Metropolis. And I felt like the payoff wasn't satisfying to me personally. I would have liked a scene or two of getting that at the very end. I also think that the third act gets a little messy. In particular, I'm not a fan of Superman reversing time. When he flies, it's Lois dies, and then he goes to try to rescue her by reversing time, flying around the planet so many times it reverses the gravitational rotation of the planet to save Lois. I'm not a fan of that for a number of reasons. At that point, it lowers the risk factor. Like when you know that a person can literally just rewind time to save somebody, there's no ultimate threat that you can really face. Not there, the stakes are never that high when you can just undo what's already been done. So I wasn't a fan of that for that reason, but also when Superman reverses the time to bring Lois back to the point just before she dies, he goes to obviously stop that second missile from hitting so that, you know, the impact isn't there. The problem though, it leaves a plot hole in the movie because if he went back reverse time to stop the second missile, well, what about the first missile? Like the first missile would have still hit, so, because they hit simultaneously. When Superman threw the first missile out into space, the second missile hit simultaneously. That's what caused the earthquake and Lois to obviously die. So if he reversed that to the point where he was able to stop the second missile, well, the first missile then would have still been hitting. So one of the missiles is still going to hit regardless. They don't ever address that. They just leave it like, okay, Lois is alive. He saved Jimmy Olsen and everything's as it should be. But you're leaving that plot hole unsettled there. So it gets messy in that third act with how they set that up. Probably could have been thought through or flushed out a little bit better, have something there to resolve. You don't need Lois dying in this first movie anyways. So they probably could have done something better there. And also, Jarrell kind of warns Cal about don't mess with human history. We hear that repeated throughout the film. Don't mess with human history. That's one of the laws, if you will, of Krypton. Don't mess with human history. Yes, Superman obviously messes with human history by reversing time, but we don't see what the consequences are. Why was that off the board? Why? We never got the reason why Cal shouldn't mess with human history. We never got to see the consequences of what the implications would be if he does that. So we have this message being pushed throughout the film, but it's never resolved. We never see anything that comes from it. So why have that in there in the first place? And then the one other negative for me, I would say, would be Cal's childhood, Clark's childhood when he's grown up on the farm in Kansas with his parents. Um, that was very kind of sped through. There's really no time in seeing who he was as a child. And I think you really could have just taken that out probably because it didn't do anything for the film. All we see is that he was adopted by the Kents, his dad dies, and that's it. Like they don't build any rapport together. They don't build any chemistry with him and his dad or him and his mom. They don't really establish that relationship at all. It's really just here he is as a kid. He gets adopted by the Kents. Dad dies from a heart attack. Boom. Let's go to Metropolis. I just felt like that part of his life was really just glassed over and not really developed at all. And it wasn't really needed. It's definitely the weakest part of the film is that childhood sequence. If you're gonna put it in the script, make it impactful, have it mean something. Let us see that Clark learns a lesson from then, or build a relationship with him and his parents. Make us feel something there. There's nothing that comes from that sequence. So for me, that was another kind of issue I had with the film. No real relationship built or developed with him and his parents, and the scene that we get of them offers us nothing with the story. Doesn't impact the story at all. So that's basically all I have for the negatives. Some script issues there. Overall, this is still a great film. I still love this movie. My overall rating here, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. It's still a great film, especially for its time, 1978. There's no superhero movie like this. I believe this was like the first. I mean, you had the Batman movie 1966, but that was based on a TV show. Like that wasn't a standalone superhero feature film, like Superman was. So, for being the first of its kind in a way, I thought they did a great job. It's still a lot of fun. The performances are great. And I have a lot of nostalgia with this film. So 4 to 5, love Superman the movie. But let me know y'all's thoughts in the comment section. Do y'all agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. And stay tuned for more Superman reviews coming as we work our way to Superman 2025. And until next time, you know what it is. Kick it and rock on.